everyone. Welcome back to my vlog. My name is Katie, if you guys are new here. And today I wanted to share with you my birth story with my youngest. And she just turned 2. And so her birthday kind of had me like all in my feelings, reminiscing that day 2 years ago that I gave birth to her. And she's my 3rd child. I have 3 kids. And her birth was amazing. It was a super positive, just amazing birth that I dreamed for and prayed for, because my first 2 kids, those births were very, very long, very painful, very difficult. And the recovery process was also kind of difficult. They just weren't the best experiences. And honestly, even though I had already done this 2 times, going into this the 3rd time, I was terrified because I had had these 2 not so great negative experiences, and it was scary. You know, even though I knew what to expect, it was very scary. And so, you know, I have faith in God. And so honestly, I prayed a lot throughout my pregnancy with her that her birth would be completely different from the first 2, and that God would give me a positive and just amazing birth experience, because that was just what I wanted more than anything in the world, because we're like 99.9% sure that she's our last kid. So, you know, this is going to be my last time doing this. And I just really prayed so hard that this would be a positive experience, and it was. And it completely changed my mind about birth. And, you know, I told my husband, I was like, if it had been this easy every time, I would have so many children, because it was just so easy and positive. So I wanted to share that with you guys today, because I had put up a poll on my Instagram asking if this was something that you guys would be interested in watching, and you guys said yes. So I'm going to tell you the birth story with her, and thanks for being here. Okay, so starting with my pregnancy was completely normal. Pretty much all 3 of my pregnancies were normal. I never really had any issues. With this pregnancy, my 3rd, in the beginning, I had I was nauseous a lot. That was pretty typical for me of each pregnancy for like the first trimester. So I had that, but then pretty much after I was out of that first trimester, I really didn't have any other issues. One thing that was different though was with my first 2 children, I never had Braxton Hicks. I never felt contractions until it was the real thing. So I didn't really know what that felt like. But with this one, I would say probably the last 2 months of the pregnancy, I got Braxton Hicks. So finally got to experience that. And if you have never experienced those, the best way that I can describe it is like a really strong like cramp that you would get like when you're about to start your period, but very strong. Not really painful, but just crampy is the best way that I can describe that. So I did have some Braxton Hicks towards the end of my pregnancy. At 36 weeks, I went in for a checkup, and my doctor, she asked me if I wanted to see if I was dilated at all. So I said, sure. And she checked, and she told me that I was 4 centimeters dilated. At 36 weeks, I was like, are you serious? Because to me, I was thinking 4 centimeters is almost 5 centimeters, and 5 centimeters is halfway there. So, you know, I got super excited, and I was like, oh man, I'm going to go into labor any second. This is about to be over. Because, you know, if you've been pregnant, you know that towards the end of the pregnancy, you're huge, you're exhausted, you're tired, you can't sleep, you just want it to be over. You want to hold your baby. So I thought that it would happen soon, but my doctor was like, it's probably not going to happen too soon. So I went home, and, you know, my other 2 births, I was induced both times, and I never went into labor on my own. My labor was brought on by medicine. So with this one, knowing that it is most likely my last baby, I really, really, really wanted to like go into labor on my own, because I had never experienced that, and I wanted to. You know, I wanted to have like that moment in the movies where your water breaks when you're at the grocery store. Like I wanted that. I wanted something crazy to happen, because I had never had that, and this was my last chance. And so I really prayed that I would go into labor on my own. But unfortunately, that did not end up happening, but that's okay. So I had thought that I was 4 centimeters dilated, that I would, be going into labor at any minute. So I tried everything, you guys. I looked up online how to make yourself go into labor. I ate spicy food. I walked up and down stairs. I bought one of those yoga balls and I just bounced on that thing all the time. And my kids, my older two were 4 and 2 at the time. And so they would, try to fight me for the ball because they wanted to bounce on it too. I tried everything, but my body, I don't know. I think that my body maybe just can't go into labor on its own. So I was 4 centimeters. The next week I was at the point of weekly checkups. So the next week I went back to the doctor. She checked again, still at 4 centimeters. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And she said, I remember she told me, she was like, this is a 4 centimeters, like your body has done this 2 times already. It knows what to do. It's getting ready. This is not a 4 centimeters like you're about to go into labor. So that was kind of a bummer because like I said, I really wanted to go into labor on my own. So when I reached 38 weeks at that checkup, I was still 4 centimeters. And this was my 3rd time giving birth. I had been induced the 2 other times. My first labor was at 39 weeks. My second labor, I was induced at 40 weeks. And so my doctor said that I was already 4 centimeters, that this being my 3rd baby, she told me that it should go quicker, it should be fast, and my body already knew what to do. So she said that she was going to induce me at 39 weeks, which I was totally okay for because at that point, I had not gone into labor on my own. It wasn't looking like I was going to, and I was ready for this to be over. I wanted to get her out, have my baby and not be pregnant anymore. And also the other thing was that my due date was a few days before Christmas. And this was a big deal to me, for whatever reason. I really did not want to be in the hospital on Christmas. I had a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old at home. And even though they wouldn't know, if we'd celebrated Christmas at a later date, they wouldn't have known the difference. But to me, at that time, it was just important to me that I be home on Christmas. So I did not want to risk, waiting and then going into labor on Christmas or having to be at the hospital then. So my doctor said that we could induce at 39 weeks, 1 week before Christmas. And then that way, I get to have the baby and then also make sure that I wasn't at the hospital on Christmas. So I was like, yes, sign me up. That sounds great. So the morning of my induction, I remember I was supposed to be there at like 7:30. I think they said I had to call and make sure that there was a bed for me because with inductions, what they do is they schedule you for one. But if a bunch of women go into labor on their own naturally and all the beds are full, then they will push it back to either, later that day or the next day, whenever they get a bed available, since an induction is not an emergency. So you have to call like the morning of and make sure that they have a bed for you. So I did. They said, yes, they had beds to come at 7:30. So my husband and I packed up and headed there. And I remember it was December and it was just lightly snowing, like a really pretty light snow on our way to the hospital. So it was kind of fun. I love snow, so that was cool for me. And then we got there and we checked in. They put us in a room. I had this really sweet nurse. She was an older lady, probably in her 60s. And she was super sweet, very talkative. And, we were going to be together all day long. And her shift, I think she had got there around the same time that I did. And her shift was going to end at, I think, 7 p.m. So she said her goal was to have this baby be born during her shift while she was there. And to me, with my first and my second, my first labor was 33 hours long. My second one was about 29 hours long. So again, like I said earlier, I was terrified. I was going into this thinking and just assuming that this labor was also going to be extremely long because that's the only experience I had. So I remember telling her I don't know, but we'll see. That would be great if this baby was born while you were still here, but we'll see. So anyways, they got me all hooked up. They got an IV in because they started the labor with Pitocin, which is also, I had done that in the past on my other 2 inductions. So I knew, what was about to happen. And so sure enough, I was hooked up to that for maybe an hour or so and the cramps started. And that's kind of what contractions feel like in the beginning, is cramps. Like the Braxton Hicks contraction that I was telling you about earlier. It feels like a period cramp, but they get stronger and stronger and closer together. And it just gets really hard. But in the beginning, they started off as just kind of like period crampy, and they were very spaced out. And so that went on for a couple hours on the Pitocin. And then a doctor came in, and my baby, she was like moving a lot, and they put a monitor like band around your belly because they want to monitor the baby's heartbeat and everything while you're in labor. And so she kept moving, so they kept having to adjust the thing to keep her heartbeat on the monitor, and she kept moving, and she was just being a wiggle worm. So the doctor that was on call, he came in and he's like, we want to attach a head monitor to her because she's just moving around so much. And then that way we don't have to deal with the bands around your belly. And I knew what was coming with that because they had also done that with my first. They had to put a head monitor on her because she was also moving around too much. So I knew that was going to happen. I was like, okay. So if you've never seen this before, they have this little monitor clip, and it's attached to a very long wire, and the doctor will use their hand and go up into your cervix and into your uterus and actually push that little clip right onto the top of the baby's head, the part that is right there at the opening of the cervix. And that monitors their heartbeat. I'm not exactly sure how all that works medically, but somehow that does. And then the cord just kind of, it comes, back out of you and is attached to the, you know what I'm talking about, the monitor. So this part, you guys, was the worst part of the whole labor because the man had to take his hand and go all the way up into there. And I think at this point, maybe I was 5 centimeters dilated, but so he had to take his hand and go up in there, and he kept like not being able to get her head. And oh my gosh, it was awful. I was in tears because that hurt so bad. Just him being in there, that was the worst part. It was so bad. And I was crying, and he felt really bad. He's like, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to do this as quickly as I can. I'm so sorry. And I was like, it's not your fault. This has to be done, but this hurts. So he finally got that clipped. And then after that, I wasn't even contracting that bad, but after the pain of him having to do that, I was like, okay, I'm ready for my epidural. So with the epidural, I did have epidurals with my older 2 kids, but they did not work fully. They never took to all of my body. They took to 1/2 of my body. And then also because I was in labor for over 24 hours with both of them, it just, by the time I gave birth, it had worn off a lot. I was in a lot of pain with those 2 labors. With this epidural, the doctor came in and did it when I was about 5 centimeters. I'd been there for a couple hours. And it actually didn't hurt while he was doing it. It was a great experience. He did it really quickly. And then literally as soon as he put it in, I felt amazing. I literally, my whole body, from my chest down, was numb, and I could not feel anything. And I was like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be like. Because with my other 2, I had never felt that whole body numb. It was a really weird feeling, you guys, because I couldn't even lift my own legs. It literally felt like my legs were 100-pound weights. It is the weirdest, most bizarre feeling ever, but it was amazing. I could not feel anything. I was so relaxed. I was like, this is great. That was seriously the best. So then the nurse was in there, and I asked her if I could have a peanut ball. So if you guys don't know what a peanut ball is, I'm going to try to insert a picture of one right here if I can. But it's kind of like a yoga ball, but it's shaped like a peanut, and you're supposed to lay on your side and put it in between your legs, and then it just kind of opens up your cervix, and it just helps your cervix stay nice and open, and it kind of helps your body naturally keep opening the cervix because you have to get to those 10 centimeters. So I asked the nurse if I could have a peanut ball, and she's like, oh, that's a great idea. So definitely, make sure that you advocate for yourself. Since I had already been through this 2 times before, and I had already used a peanut ball in the past, I knew that they did work. And that wasn't something that a nurse suggested to me this time. Nobody was going to give me one until I brought it up for myself. And I got that peanut ball. I laid on my side, which was really funny because the epidural, I could not roll over. And so my husband and the nurse had to roll me onto my side. I felt like a whale, literally. It was the weirdest feeling. And so then they put the peanut ball in between my legs, And I laid like that for probably 2 hours. I think I flipped to the other side one time. They wanted me to flip, and I just laid like that. And by the time they checked me the next time, I was like 8 centimeters. So the peanut ball really helped. And I remember the nurse was like, wow, that was a good idea on the peanut ball. That really did help you. So I was glad that I had, spoke up and advocated for myself with that. So if you are going to be going into labor anytime soon, I definitely recommend asking for a peanut ball because they really, really do help open up your cervix. So a couple more hours went by, and at this point, it was around 4 in the afternoon. So I got there at 7:30. This was about 4 in the afternoon. Doctor came back to check me, and she's like, oh, you're 10 centimeters. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you serious? So I had felt no pain. I felt nothing. I was feeling great. I couldn't feel contractions, but I was having them, regularly. And so she said, yep, let's just chill out, relax, and give your body time for the baby to labor down. So the baby has to go from the cervix down the birth canal to the opening. And if you give the baby a little bit of time to do that, the baby will naturally labor down on their own, and then you don't have to push so hard. That's something that I did not know about, like going into my first labor. And even this one, I was just kind of like, well, what is labor down? And that's what the nurse explained to me, but that it gives the baby time to go down on its own, and then the mom does not have to push as hard, which is awesome. So I just chilled for about 30 minutes, and when they checked her again, she had labored down, and she was like right there. They could feel her hair and everything. And so they're like, it's time to push. And I remember when they said it's time to push, I got so emotional. I started crying. And my doctor, that was the first time I'd seen her all day. She walked into the room. She's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just feeling a little emotional. Like, this is my 3rd child, and she's about to be here. We're about to meet her. I'm all in my feels. She's like, oh, it's okay. I was like, I'm fine, really. So I got into position. I had my husband there holding one leg. My mom was there holding the other leg because I could not feel my legs. Couldn't keep them up on my own. And so I started to push. I think I pushed for like 20 minutes, maybe even less than that. And you guys, this was amazing because with my other 2, I felt every push. It was so painful. It was so hard. But with this one, with this epidural working, I didn't feel anything. Like, they kept having to tell me, push harder. And so I would push, or I would try to, and I'd be like, did that work? Did I do anything? Am I doing it? And they'd be like, yeah, do that harder. And so I was like, I'm trying, but like, I literally could not feel anything. It was a very kind of weird feeling to not be able to feel yourself pushing, but them telling you like, oh yeah, good job, keep doing that. So I pushed for 20 minutes. And then she was here, and they laid her on my chest, and she was so sweet. She had hair. My other 2 babies were bald. So to see that she had hair, it was a shock. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do with the baby with hair. She was so cute. She's my precious little peanut. And so then we just chilled for a little while. And then I asked the nurse, I was like, can I try to breastfeed? And she's like, yeah, if you're ready for it, go ahead. And so I did. And my first 2 kids, they did not take to breastfeeding really naturally, especially my oldest. And honestly, breastfeeding, I do think that breastfeeding is amazing. If you can do it, you should try because it is so good for the baby. It gives the baby so much nutrients. It's good for the mother. But if it's messing with your mental health, it's not worth it. My other 2 babies had formula, and they are fine. They are super smart. They do everything that their peers do. You would not be able to tell that they were not breastfed for their whole infancy. So that's kind of my thing on breastfeeding. I love it. It's great. But if it gets to a point where it's not great and it's not good for you as a mother, don't. Just go to formula, and it is okay. Do not guilt yourself for that. Do not shame yourself for that. That's just something that I'm passionate about. But with this baby, she took to breastfeeding naturally, and that was great. And actually, we were able to breastfeed for 14 months, which that is still one of my proudest accomplishments as a mom because, like I said, with my other 2, I had to stop after like 4 to 6 weeks. But for Ellie, my 2-year-old now, we breastfed till 14 months, and it blew my mind that she just took to it naturally, and it just worked out. So I have 3 kids, and she's the only one that it worked out that way. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But either way, you are still a great mom, whichever one works for you. And don't let anybody tell you differently than that. So after I gave birth, my doctor, with the other two babies, I had torn and had stitches. But with this baby, she said that I had like a little tiny, tiny tear, but she said it wasn't even enough to put stitches in. And honestly, I felt no pain, which is amazing because with my other two, I was in so much pain afterwards. I couldn't hardly move. It was just so painful. With this baby, I was up walking around. I was sitting crisscrossed on my bed. I had no pain. And the nurses kept coming in and asking me like, do you want anything for your pain? And I kept telling them, I have no pain. I feel so great. And I don't think they believed me because they're like, you just pushed a baby out. Like, how are you in no pain? But guys, that's why this was an amazing birth experience, because I had no pain. And I'm so thankful to God that he gave me that experience that I had so deeply prayed for and longed for. So yeah, I felt great. The funny thing is, so she was born at like about 4:30 p.m. the first day. I stayed all of the second day. And then that next morning, my 4-year-old, she was going to preschool, and they were doing like a little winter show. The kids were all going to sing songs. All the parents were going to come, and it was a pretty big deal for her. Like, she kept asking me like, Mommy, are you going to be there for that? And I wanted to be, but I didn't know if I was going to still be in the hospital. So I remember when they came in and they said that I could be discharged, and I was like, okay, let's go. So we went home. My dad, he stayed at my house with my 2-year-old, and I dropped the baby off. And then I felt so good that I went to my daughter's preschool, which is literally like 3 minutes from our house. It's so close to our house. And I went to the preschool, and her teachers, when they saw me, they were like, oh my gosh, you're here? They're like, sit down, sit down. They gave me like their big plush office chairs. I was like, really? I feel fine. But I know people probably thought this woman is crazy. Why is she here? She just gave birth. And honestly, if that had been my first baby, you guys, I would not have left my baby for 1 second. But this was the third baby. I have other kids. Like, life goes on. And I think the more kids you have, the more you realize life goes on. And you can't, with that first baby, you have, they have your whole undivided attention, and they are your life. But when you have other kids, all of those kids equally are your life. And this was important to my daughter, so I wanted to be there. And my baby, my newborn, literally slept the whole time I was gone, which I was gone all of 30 minutes. This was a very short little program. They sang 2 songs, and my dad stayed at home with the baby, and she slept the whole time that I was gone. So she didn't even know that I wasn't there. And it meant so much to my 4-year-old. She was just smiling ear to ear that I was there. And so that was a really special moment. I was so glad that I was there for that. And honestly, another reason that I was just so thankful that this was such an easy recovery, and that I felt no pain, because if I had felt pain like I did with my other 2 births, I would not have been able to be there and do that. But I was not in any pain. So I never felt pain like down in my region, you know what I mean? I never felt pain there. It was the weirdest thing. I still don't know how that happened. But the thing that I did have pain with, breastfeeding, I had a lot of pain with that in the beginning. And honestly, it hurt a lot for probably the first 2 months. It hurt a lot. There was a lot of nights where I just cried because I was in so much pain from breastfeeding, and I wanted to give up, but I didn't. And I had read something on the internet about breastfeeding, that don't give up in that moment when you feel like you want to give up. Keep going. Just one more nursing session, and then one more nursing session, and then one more nursing session. And before you know it, you've done 6 months. And so I, would just say that over and over in my mind, I'm going to make it until the next nursing session. And I did. And then I did 14 months, like I said. So that's definitely my advice. If you're breastfeeding, it is not always easy, and it is painful. But if it's truly something that you're committed to and that you want to do, then just try to make it until the next nursing session, and then keep going, just do your best. So that is my birth story with her. It was an amazing experience, such a positive thing. It was fast. I think it was like 7 hours maybe from start to finish being induced, which is pretty good, I think. And so, yeah, it was an awesome experience, and I'm so glad that with that being my last baby and my last birth experience, that that's how I got to end it, was with that positive experience. It just was the icing on the cake for me. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you have any birth experiences or stories to share, I would love to hear those. Leave those in the comments. I love to listen to people talk about births and stuff like that. It has always fascinated me, and having gone through it 3 times myself, it's just amazing how every experience is so different. And birth is just, it's so cool. Bringing a life into this world, it's amazing. So thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. And if you liked this, I would love for you to hit that like button. And then if you're new here, please subscribe. It really helps out my channel. I would love to have you a part of my YouTube family. Thanks so much, guys. I will see you in my next video. Bye.
Don't wanna be shy.